Project Montauk and time travel. Okay, so now we have this program. In the early 1970s, you have the Montauk Project. Preston Nichols and Peter Moon, in 1992, they put out a book called the Montauk Project. And so that described Project Phoenix, or the Montauk Project as it's been more popularly known. And that ran from 1971 to 1983. So the goal was to develop invisibility, mind control, time travel, and portal technology with the help of contractors such as AT&T. Okay, well, AT&T, why them? Well, AT&T is a major US aerospace contractor, and its specialty was telecommunications. Now, the interesting thing about AT&T was that during the Second World War, even though the AT&T was an American company, it ran Nazi Germany's phone service. Okay, believe it or not, I mean, that's actually a fact, that Nazis' phone service, that was based on AT&T technology. So AT&T helped the Nazi phone system. So AT&T was very connected with Nazi Germany and with their experiments. And in the 1950s, when agreements were reached between the US and the Fourth Reich, based out of Antarctica, AT&T was one of the contractors. And in fact, AT&T was one of the aerospace contractors that ran the Antarctic support program for the US Science Foundation. So AT&T has been involved in these classified programs for a long, long time, but also was very much involved in time travel technology. And there was an incident involving AT&T that is quite relevant here that I'll return to later. So the Montauk chair, what is that? This is a chair that basically enhanced psychic abilities to control advanced extraterrestrial technology, and this was used for time travel or space travel as well. You could travel through space-time using the Montauk chair. That somehow it magnified one's thoughts and it focused the consciousness in such a way that it could project a person or open up portals for space-time. So this is the way it was described in the Montauk Project book by Preston Nichols. Duncan would start out sitting in the chair. Then the transmitter would be turned on. His mind would be blank and clear. He would then be directed to concentrate on an opening in time from, say, 1980, the current time, to 1990, 10 years in the future. At this point, a hole or time portal would appear right in the center of the delta T antenna. You could walk through the portal from 1980 to 1990. So Duncan Cameron is sitting in this chair. He's able to create a hole or a portal, and people could walk through this hole or portal into the future. There was an opening that you could look into. It looked like a circular corridor with a light at the other end. The time door would remain as long as Duncan would concentrate on 1990 and 1980. So the person sitting in the Montauk chair, as long as he was able to keep in mind clearly the present date and the projected date, that the time portal between those two dates connecting them would remain open. That's the way it operated. Now, the Montauk Project, this is something that's been discussed by various sources. Now, there's a recent video that describes some of what happened there, and it has a very good collection of insiders revealing what happened at Montauk, the time travel experiments, the portal experiments that happened there, how up to 300,000 children were used in the experiments, and time travel was a part of it. So this is a video, I believe you can watch it on Vimeo or on Amazon Prime. So just type in Montauk Chronicles, it's well worth it. It goes for about 90 minutes and definitely it gives you a good understanding of the Montauk Project. Now, one of the participants in the Montauk Projects was Stuart Swerdlow, and I got to do an interview with him a few weeks ago, and he was able to talk about his involvement in the time travel experiments that were occurring there at Montauk. And so I want to play to you an extract from our interview where he talks about one of the time travel experiments that he was sent on and what was involved in that. So here we go. I'm just going to start playing that for you now.
In the beginning, we had a different technology for the time travel. So if you can imagine a mirror, it looked like a mirror with, you could see energy waves through it, and they would program the device to a specific point in history, frequency time, and you would literally step through the mirror. And when you got to the other, and it felt like you were passing through liquid, like a thicker liquid for a moment. And then when you pass through, you'd be on where you're supposed to be. And they were able to see you because you would be wearing an anchor device that would connect to the Montauk location. So they had a visual and an audio connection to the person that as they sent them. And they went through many different places. There was one group of aliens that actually had, for lack of a better term, a video. It's not really a video. It's more like a crystal that when you put it in the device, it showed you what was going on in historical times. So they were able to see Roman times and prehistoric times, anything. Everything on this planet has been recorded, everything. And they have libraries of this information that hopefully one day will be revealed to the public.
So there you have Stuart Swerdlow talking about how this time travel technology was being used during the Montauk project and that everything could be recorded. And this was a way of gathering a lot of intelligence, and they had improved the technology so that he mentioned some kind of ankle grounding device where that would help them better keep track of people that were involved in these time travel experiments. So this is just giving us another source, another independent source, confirming that these time travel experiments have been around for a long time and they've been refined by the Navy and by the intelligence community. Now, what I found particularly interesting was during our interviews, Stuart talked about him being sent on 2 time travel missions into the remote past, and he was tasked, one of his tasks was to assassinate Jesus. And that mission failed, and clearly what that showed was that one could not manipulate past events to a greater degree, that a major historical figure like Jesus, that what we know historically doesn't occur. So the assassination of Jesus didn't happen during his period of lecturing and educating people and doing all his miracles. This is prior, of course, to the crucifixion. So when that mission failed, he was sent on a second mission to extract blood from the crucified Jesus, and that was used to create a clone of Jesus, so that you could actually, in the present time, create a fake Messiah who would have all of the memories of Jesus. So fascinating project. So that's something you can listen to, but it does show that there are limitations on how much you can change past events. You can maybe do things like extract blood from the crucified Jesus, and that would, you could do that because that didn't change historical events to any significant degree. But to actually assassinate Jesus during the 3 years when he was roaming Palestine and doing his miracles and preaching, that couldn't be done, because that 3 years was fundamental, and the history wouldn't allow that to be changed. Now, Andrew Basiago. Now, he's a very interesting researcher, or actually witness, because he's been a participant in these time travel experiments. Now, he says that he was in 1967 involved in time travel for the first time as a 6-year-old, as a chrononaut. So that was a term he started to use, that he is a chrononaut. That makes sense. Astronaut traveling through space, chrononaut traveling through time. So the technology was developed at the Ralph M. Parsons Engineering Company, where his father worked on behalf of the forerunner to the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency and the CIA. And yes, that is true, that the Ralph M. Parsons Engineering Company was a very real company, and that it was involved in all kinds of classified research. And so Andy Basiago's father was involved with the Parsons company. He did work with that company, and that's something that Basiago was able to prove during his interviews and discussions, and putting out his evidence for the reality of this project Pegasus. And that DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, was also involved in this research from the very beginning. Now, back in the 1960s, DARPA was, the D wasn't there. It was just known as ARPA. Now, Andy Basiago, he describes this project, this time travel project, as Pegasus, and it involved many children involved in testing, and he was involved from 1969 to 72. And he also describes many injuries and fatalities in developing time travel technology in the early 1970s. So that matches what the Montauk Project witnesses have described. So this is another source, another independent source, describing these time travel experiments using children, and that many of them died or were severely injured because of these time travel experiments. Now, one of the most kind of controversial issues of Andy Basiago was him claiming that in 1963, on November 19, he was present at Abraham Lincoln's famous Gettysburg Address, that he was sent back in time, and that he listened, also that he was there during Lincoln's address, even though he didn't get to watch it just because something happened where he started to fade back out of time into the present. But he says he found this photo of Lincoln's address with a young child, and he said that was him. So he's used this photo and pointed out this anomaly where you have what appears to be a child in this kind of crowd just before the Gettysburg Address. So very interesting that Basiago says this. Now, I've known Andrew Basiago since 2006, and I just got to do my first interview with him last week. So next week, I'll put it out so you get to listen to my first interview with Andy. I've been kind of sitting on the fence regarding Andrew Basiago's testimony for many years, but what convinced me that he was the real deal? This is an incident that convinced me. I was listening to the Art Bell show in 2015. Art Bell was doing Midnight in the Desert. He had left Coast to Coast. So he was starting up another program, Midnight in the Desert, and it was taking off. And he got to interview Andy Basiago. So Andrew Basiago is talking about Project Pegasus, and Art Bell is very famous for his kind of like openness, but also skeptical. I mean, he wanted, show me what's the evidence for this. And Andy Basiago came up with an incident that really shocked Art Bell, which was very unusual, and it convinced me that Andy was the real deal. Andy Basiago says that in 1970 he was taken to an IT&T facility. Mentioned IT&T, I mentioned it earlier, and that Andy Basiago says that it was involved in time travel experiments, or in Project Pegasus. So he says he was taken to this facility at Nutley, New Jersey, and that IT&T was conducting time travel experiments with Project Pegasus back in 1970. Now, Andy Basiago says that he met Art Bell at that AT&T facility in 1970. That Andy Basiago was part of a group of kids. I can't remember if it was 25 or 30 kids, and that they were there being given a tour of the AT&T facility because they were part of Project Pegasus. And Art Bell was associated with Project Pegasus. And what was really shocking to Art Bell was that Art Bell said, "I've never told anyone about that." Art Bell confirmed that in 1970 he was working for AT&T at the Nutley facility, and that Art Bell said that he was working at the time for a highly classified communication project for NATO, and he couldn't talk about it anymore. So he didn't confirm that he was involved in time travel experiments. He just confirmed that he was there in 1970 and that he was working on a highly classified program for AT&T on behalf of NATO. So that incident convinced me that Andy Basiago was the real deal. And since that time, I began having conversations with Andy, and I've been quietly researching some of his claims, and I've been able to confirm some of them. So I'll be talking about that in my interview. Now, Andy Basiago, he came out with an affidavit where he talks about, he put this online. I can't remember when he did this. Would have been around 2016, 17, something like that, or actually maybe a little earlier, but around that period, where he says that he laid out all of his claims of being part of these time travel experiments, and that there were 8 time travel technologies that were under development by different US agencies. And so he describes, and if you do a web search, Andrew Basiago affidavit, it'll come up with this. You can see it. It's a PDF. You can find it online. Well worth reading. So he describes 8 time travel experiments. So I'll just kind of go through these pretty quickly. We've discussed some of them already. So he describes remote viewing. This is something that's been known for some time. Remote viewers have been able to look at past and future events. Famous incident was involving Joseph McMoneagle being tasked by the CIA in the mid-1990s to look at Mars a million years previously to find out what happened to the Martian civilization. So yeah, psychics have been trained, have been using remote viewing to look into past and future events for different intelligence agencies. So that's not new. Spinning, this is something I've never heard of. And he says that if a body is spun 33 revolutions per minute, then you can actually create an out-of-body experience that travels through space-time. So if you spin someone around, kind of like how they train astronauts, how you spin them around 33 revolutions per minute, generating G-forces, that creates an OBE. I hadn't heard of that. Very interesting. I guess people may be researching this, but wouldn't be hard to confirm that really happens. Now, the Montauk chair, we've talked about that. Others have talked about it. So, yeah, we know that's a form of time travel. A teleporter, a portal, a stargate, instantaneous space-time travel. That is something that can be related to the kind of experiments that the US Navy has been working on since the incident with the Kearsarge in 1936, that they've refined that kind of technology. The chronovisor, we've talked about that. Plasma confinement chamber, he says that this is what was used for him to travel to 1863 for the Gettysburg Address, that somehow that uses a wormhole. And very interesting. Now, I would have said, well, that sounds very similar to a Stargate, but his 7th technology, he says, is a Stargate. And he says he took a trip to 2045 to retrieve microfilm summaries of future events. So this Stargate, so I'm not quite sure exactly what the difference is between a plasma confinement chamber and a Stargate. Both seem to use some kind of wormhole connecting the past and the future to the present. So that's something worth clarifying later. And a jump room. This is kind of like a technology where time travel can be used for transporting personnel back and forth. And he says he was involved from, I think he said 1980, from from 1980 to 84, if I recall correctly, he was involved in this Jump Room to Mars program for talented and gifted children. Oh, sorry, by that time he was going to university. So fascinating testimony, and I think there's a lot to Andy Basiago, and I think if we're looking at time travel, we'll really kind of look at some of his claims. And a good place to start is his affidavit, which is a very concise explanation of his experiences with time travel technologies. So I'll leave it to you to talk about, to kind of like explore that further. Now the wingmakers, this is another fascinating aspect of time travel. Now, according to the wingmakers material, in 1972, some extraterrestrial artifacts were discovered at Chaco Canyon, New Mexico, and that these were dated by the intelligence community to the 8th century AD, and that apparently a colony or someone having advanced technologies that were thought to be extraterrestrials established a colony in 8th century AD among the Anasazi Indians. And so this artifact was dated to that time. So that came to the attention of the intelligence community. But and the National Security Agency starts an Ancient Arrow project in 1973 to try and understand, well, what were these extraterrestrials or future humans or someone with advanced technologies, what were they doing establishing a colony in the 8th century AD among the Anasazi Indians? But it was shelved because the advanced technology at the time couldn't be decoded. There was the ancient artifact, they couldn't understand it, what was in it. So fast forward to 1994, a rock slide happens and it reveals 23 chambers with information on philosophy, art, and music from the future. And a group within the National Security Agency called the Advanced Contact Intelligence Organization, ACO, takes over the Ancient Arrow project. So this group is now trying to understand the contents of all of these chambers and what they were saying and what the agenda was of these future humans that had built this Chaco Canyon complex there and put in all this information. Now, the Sumerian language was used for this information. And that's very interesting because the Sumerian language, that was the language used by extraterrestrials that were communicating with Maria Orsic, who through automatic writing in 1919, through automatic writing, she wrote out the communications from these Aldebaran extraterrestrials for building space-time devices. And that was all in Sumerian. She didn't know that at the time. And that was why the German secret societies believed her, because there was no way she could understand ancient Sumerian. And it was translated at the time. And it was found to be instructions for developing a space-time device. Well, now we fast forward, it's 1994, we're talking, 75 years later, you have a chamber filled with all of this writing and information about philosophy, art, music, and presumably technology from the future. And it was all written in Sumerian. Now, apparently the Sumerian language was translated by one of the scientists, Dr. Anderson, who goes rogue when the wingmakers convince him to release the information, because the wingmakers tell him, look, we are future humans. We are actually an evolution of the ACO, Advanced Contact Intelligence Organization, from 1994, or that era, the 1990s, that like 700, 800 years in the future, ACO is a very different organization. We are the future ACO, and we're contacting you now, and we're telling you that that your organization is going to try and muzzle all this, so we want you to go and tell the public about it. So this scientist goes rogue and starts talking about it. So, well, is any of this real? Can we prove any of this? Well, there are witnesses that talk about the ACO, the Advanced Contact Intelligence Organization. One of those witnesses is Daniel Salter. He was a disclosure project witness from 2001. He worked for, he had at least a 20-year career with the US Air Force. He reached the rank of Command Sergeant Major. I think that was an E7, so very high rank. And then after he left ACO, he was recruited by the National Reconnaissance Organization. And so there's documentation proving this. So this is a very credible witness. And he says that the ACO does exist and it's within the NSA. Now, he calls it the Alien Contact Intelligence Organization, but it's the same organization or entity as the Advanced Contact Intelligence Organization that I've been discussing. So I'm just going to play that for you now.
If you're on that level, there's an organization worldwide called ACIO. That's Alien Contact Intelligence Organization. If you pay your dues, you follow the rules, you can benefit, your government is allowed to benefit from that organization's information.
Okay, so that's a very short clip, but it just confirms that the ACO does exist, that it's an organization that operates around the world, and that if governments want to get information or intelligence concerning these kinds of projects, that they have to pay their dues, as he said. In other words, they have to collaborate with the secret government. You've got to keep it all secret. You can't release what's going on to the public. And if you do, if you follow the rules, then you'll get all the benefits. And if you don't follow the rules, you'll end up like Saddam Hussein in 2003, who didn't follow the rules and wanted to release what was going on, and Iraq was invaded and he was deposed. So that's an aside. So Al Bilak, he also had something to say about the Wingmakers, and he actually says that he was taken into the future, and I think he said that these are future humans from 750 years into the future. And so he describes what he encountered when he was taken into the future and experienced the Wingmakers. So I'm going to play that clip now.
It's been found. That was in New Mexico. There are 6 more. There are rumors that a second one has been found. But of course, the first one was totally under the control of NSA, National Security Agency. Underneath the basic organization was another one called ACIO, Advanced Contact Intelligence Organization. They are the ones who apparently pull all of the rare and exotic research involving finds which might look like aliens, but proved in this case not to be. It was a time travel operation. And that is the group which is set aside to do it, and there's a special group within ACIO, known as the Wingmakers Group, which was working on this project and keeping it very, very secret. They identified the group that was as having come from the 28th century, originating in the 28th century. They called themselves the Wingmakers, which is what I remember, and they were interactive with this time period also. That is the 20th century into the 21st century. They did not give me any indication at the time when I was in the 20th century that they were interactive with the 20th century, but I got the distinct impression that I had not seen the last of them from the various things they said.
So there you have Al Bilak not only confirming that the Wingmakers existed and that they came from the 28th century and that they were being studied by the Advanced Contact Intelligence Organization, ACO. He says that he actually was taken there, that he during the Montauk project was taken into the 28th century, and that he interacted with that century, with people, beings from that century, and that they were called the Wingmakers. So very significant that this information came out, because we have different sources confirming the reality of ACIO and the Wingmakers material. So what happened was that the Wingmakers material originally was focused on the Wingmakers being humans from the future interacting with present-day humans and trying to help us and giving us advanced knowledge, philosophy, music, knowledge, and so forth. And this was something that different organizations wanted to suppress. So the Wingmakers narrative changed. Now, I did an interview with Fred Burks. He also got very interested in the Wingmakers material from 1998, I believe it was, or 99. And he observed that in the year 2001, that key elements of the Wingmakers website was changed. So it was changed from this very optimistic perspective that future humans were interacting with us, they were here to help us evolve as a society, as a global civilization, and sharing this advanced technology and philosophy and art and music and so forth. Now it was changed, where rather than talking about these future humans called the Wingmakers, they're now talking about some central race of extraterrestrials from the central galaxy, called, I think, well, what was it? The Lysetians or something. Can't remember exactly what they were called at the moment. It escapes me, but they're now changed. It's now changed, and that rather than the big threat now was extraterrestrials that were AI in the future. And this was something very different. So the whole Wingmakers narrative changed from focusing on the future, understanding the Wingmakers being the future of humanity and we being connected to them, and that we can change by contemplating this philosophy and this music, to now the Wingmakers site is focusing on this future extraterrestrial threat associated with AI, and that the Wingmakers site was all about giving us advanced weapons to deal with this. So a really big shift, and I really credit people like Fred Burks for acknowledging that and pointing out how the Wingmakers site has been changed. And of course, there are those that follow the new Wingmakers site, but I don't agree with that particular spin. But anyway, that's maybe something for the Q&A. So moving on, Dr. David Lewis Anderson. This is a really fascinating guy. He is a former US Air Force officer with a PhD in physics, and he created a time travel institute on Long Island, New York, in the late 1990s. I'm not sure exactly the year, it could be 1999, but at some point he creates a time travel institute. And he's the real deal. He was an Air Force officer with a PhD, and he does have those credentials. Now, the interesting thing is Long Island, New York is where the Montauk Project was conducted. And he is creating, or he has been leading this effort to kind of like white world, if you like, which is to take out of the world of classified black programs time travel research and bring it into the open source literature. So he's trying to promote understanding and scientific research on time travel. So that's a picture of him there, very mysterious figure, and that's the logo of his Anderson Institute that was created in the late 1990s. It was disbanded for a while, and then I guess reinvigorated more recently. Now, interesting thing about Dr. Lewis is that Andy Bashogel says that Dr. Anderson may be linked to Project Pegasus. He wasn't certain of it, but he recalls seeing a Dr. Anderson that was part of the Project Pegasus, conducting scientific research. And as I mentioned, Dr. Anderson did have a PhD in physics and was involved in highly classified programs for the Air Force. Now, Dr. Anderson promotes the original Wingmakers material, which was putting out the idea that the Wingmakers are future humans that are communicating with us in the present day and trying to help us. And of course, the maverick or the rogue scientist in that was a Dr. Anderson. Very interesting. So I thought, well, is there a connection between the two? That's an intriguing possibility. Some people say yes, others say no, but that's intriguing. And but one thing we know about this Dr. Anderson, or Dr. David Wilson, or Dr. David Anderson, is that he attended the Montauk Project lectures in the late 1990s, and that's where he got to meet Preston Nichols, Al Bielak, Duncan Cameron, and the others. So this guy was very much plugged into that whole Montauk Project scene from the 1990s and creates a time travel research institute. So I think he's an example of a kind of scientist very similar to this rogue Dr. Anderson from the Wingmakers, who's exposed to the classified research, knows about it, and wants to open source it. And his Time Travel Research Association is doing that. Now, the Transylvania Sunrise series, I've spoken about that in previous webinars. That's researching some fascinating discoveries that began with the Bujej Mountains in Romania. And Dr. Anderson was actually, this is the same Dr. Anderson that created the Time Travel Institute in Long Island. He establishes a time travel research center in Romania in 1999. So this is prior to the discoveries in the Bujej Mountains. So you have to ask yourself, he establishes a time research institute in Long Island, where the Montauk Project had occurred in the late 1990s. He establishes it there, and then he establishes one in Romania in 1999, where 4 years later you have these incredible discoveries at the Bujej Mountains that involve these halls of records, where in each of these halls of records you have time travel technologies. What are the chances of that? Did he have advance warning? So, this Dr. Anderson is truly a fascinating character. And in the Transylvania Sunrise series, Peter Moon, the editor, repeatedly refers to him and the role he's played in bringing the Transylvania Sunrise series into the Western world and getting Peter Moon involved. So I think he is a scientist that has worked in the classified projects and is now white-walled in them. So the Romania's Bujej Mountains, they're kind of in the center of modern-day Romania. Romania borders, the border here. It borders down there. It borders with Ukraine. Very interesting. And just over here is this place called Snake Island that Russia just vacated after the Ukrainians bombarded it. So it's all taking place right there next to Romania. Very interesting. So anyway, this is the Hall of Records discovered there under the Bujej Mountains, one of the mountains. One of the mountains has on the summit a kind of local version of the Sphinx and something that's also called the Old Woman. So I've discussed this in a number of articles on my website. You can go there. Now, in this hemisphere-shaped arc of Hall of Records, there is a chamber, a projection chamber, and in the center of that chamber, I've discussed it before. In terms of, you have three tunnels over here. These three tunnels, they lead to different places like Tibet, the inner earth, and Egypt. But in the center, right here, this is a time travel device that you can go in that, and you strap something to your head, and it projects you into the past or the future. So this is a Hall of Records that's been there for many thousands of years, preserving all of these ancient records and the history of our planet, and you can kind of like look into the past and future through this device. And around here are these holograms, hologram tables, and they have the history of ancient Earth. So this is an incredible discovery. Of course, it is one of those discoveries that was made and it has been covered up. But it was discovered in 2003 and it has been covered up ever since. And I've discussed earlier in the Transylvania series, you'll see how the organization responsible for the cover up are the Freemasons. So this device in the center magnifies mental energies and learned. And so in the original Transylvania book series, all Radu Cinema knew was that it magnifies mental energies. Later on, he learned that it actually enabled time travel. So in books 3 and 4, he learned that that would enable the person in it to see the future or the past. Similar to the Montauk chair. So in book 3 of the series, I think that's book 3, the Mystery of Egypt, it also describes a time travel device. This is a hall of records under Egypt's Sphinx. So, or near Egypt's Sphinx, but underground, of course. Again, you have a large area in this hall of records. You have different devices here. Along the walls, there are these cylinders that contain holographic records going far back into human history. So human history is recorded. Now, ancients would record human history only if it was something that was invariable. It couldn't be changed. Why would you record ancient history if history could be changed by time travelers? No. I mean, sure, you can change certain aspects of history, but the fundamental events of history could not be changed. Like, the US won the Civil War, Allies won the Second World War, President Kennedy was assassinated in 1963. These are kind of nodes in history. And so apparently these holographic records contain nodes of history that any researcher such as myself, if you go there, you can understand, okay, this is something that is invariable. So this is a history of our planet. Amazing. A history of our planet kept secret by these Freemasons and the secret societies that are controlling this information. They're keeping all this secret because if scholars go in there, they can understand that this is a history that is invariable. It's a record from the Atlanteans, from the Hyperboreans, the Lemurians. We can understand it all. And sure, you can kind of like, history can be changed a little bit around the sides, but the node events, which is recorded in these things, are something that will help us tremendously in understand historical events and our present. So this time travel device, this is how Radu Cinema describes it. Quote, it's a device that can project you in time, into the future or into the past. This really is time travel, but at the level of the consciousness. It's not a movement in time with the physical body. The body stays here, but the consciousness experiences a time fragment as if you were there with your body. The advantage is that, in this case, you're an observer from the outside. You can see, feel everything exactly as it happened without being conditioned by the limitations of the body. The advantage is that you can't act. You can't personally integrate with that period of time. So that's Radu Cinema. So he's talking about this time travel device that transports consciousness to where you want to see things. Now, this is similar to what Andy Basiago described when he said he was taken to Gettysburg. He called it the plasma confinement chamber. So it kind of seems to be a similar technology principle where you go, your consciousness is taken to a place in time, you see it. It's as though you're there physically, but you're not really there physically. It's just your consciousness is projected there. And then after a certain period, you just kind of fade out back into the present. So in book 7 of the series, The Etheric Crystal, this book describes another time travel device. This one was discovered in Iraq, and apparently they brought back the schematics for how to create the time travel machine. They brought it back to Romania, and they were creating a time travel machine in Romania, and the Americans were creating a time travel machine in a location like Area 51, using what they had learned from this technology, this Hall of Records in Iraq that had been discovered in 2003. Same time Iraq was invaded. So, what are the chances of that? It's like, now we know why Saddam Hussein was taken out. He didn't want to share this with the Americans. He didn't want to play ball, So that requires energetic connection with a communication system created by an etheric crystal and components of a time travel machine called Eden. So the name of the time travel machine that this joint Romanian-American initiative in Romania was working on, they called it Eden. And it used an etheric crystal. Something similar, the principle is very similar to what Al Bielek described earlier about a crystal being used with the time travel technology that was being used, that had been developed as a result of experiments dating from the 1936 Kearsarge incident in the Atlantic Ocean at the Bermuda Triangle. So there's crystals appear to be a vital component of building a time travel machine. So this is very interesting because this particular book describes the different approaches to building a time travel machine from the Romanians who used kind of like very precise astrological auric frequency fields information to the American time travel technology, which was much more based on kind of like Western scientific principles, and which one was more effective. So interestingly, in this time travel technology that they were building, it used Tesla coils. So the Eden time travel device was based on Tesla technology. It was a difficult task to build the large special Tesla coils. They can be considered the heart of the device and the source of the space-time distortion that Eden can accomplish. So this pretty much confirms that, back in 1895, when Nikola Tesla switched on his Tesla coil and was generating these high voltage electrostatic charges, that stuff was going on at that time, and a portal was open and he could see the future and the past. So the Tesla coil is a fundamental part of a time travel device. Interesting. Tesla coils and Eden time travel device. Radul Cinema explains even more. The interaction with the frequencies modulated by Eden, which gradually became a machine of controlled space-time distortion, was obvious and powerful. This was mainly due to the modulated energy of the two special Tesla coils. Basically, everything was a game of frequencies, which had to be combined so that their action was as finely tuned as possible at the biological level. So here we have an idea of the complexity of a time travel device. You've got to get the frequencies right, which is why we understand the Vatican scientists, Dr. Annetti, was so successful because he was experimenting with Benedictine chants and modulating those chants using electromagnetics, and stumbled upon how you could modulate frequencies of sound using electromagnetics or radio frequencies, and you would have breakthroughs so you could see space-time. So this is giving us an idea of how it all works. Fascinating stuff. So this now takes me to the present day. So how does all this relate to what's happening today? What's the beef here for us? So, rather than just kind of understanding the history of time travel. And I've gone a little bit over time. I'm probably going to take about another 15 minutes, but we'll still have 30 minutes of Q&A at the end of that. So hopefully that doesn't bother you. So time travel and the Q Intel group. So in around 2017, you have a group calling itself Q that claims to be linked to the Trump administration, and there's a lot of evidence supporting the claims that this group was somehow involved with military intelligence, and that the Trump administration was the source of a lot of that intel that was coming out. So there's a lot of data confirming the reality of that. Now, I don't want to get into the Q material. I know it's controversial. Some of you might think it's disinfo, but I believe it was genuine military intelligence that was leaking material that was part of this temporal war that was going on. And why do I say that? Why do I say it was part of the temporal war? Because time travel was referred to by this Q military intelligence group. There's this intel, or this Q drop, which says that refers to Project Looking Glass. As I mentioned, Bob Lazar was the first to talk about Project Looking Glass back in 1989. And it says going forward in order to look back. So that was a hint that this Q military intelligence group was using time travel technology, was able to see the future, to anticipate events, and that this was confirming that both sides in this, and I have an article on my website, Project Looking Glass, so you can go there and I cite the different sources talking about Project Looking Glass. So this is suggesting that both sides use time travel technology to outmaneuver the other. In other words, we're in a temporal war, that the white hats and the black hats, the Earth Alliance and the deep state with its extraterrestrial allies, were all using time travel technologies to outmaneuver the other. And so what's interesting here is that only a few days ago, after an 18-month hiatus, from December 8, 2020 to June 24, so just a few days ago, a week ago, Q returned to the public and has started to post again. The significance of that. What is the significance of that? Well, a lot of Q supporters are taking heart. They're thinking, well, the Q's back, and this kind of like awakening is going to proceed. It's going to move into a high gear. And I think it does suggest that the final phase in the temporal war is underway. We're approaching the end of the temporal war. So this raises a really interesting question. Can time travel only happen via advanced technology? So I'm giving you a review based on time travel technologies that have been developed all the way back from 1895 with Nikola Tesla up until more recently. And that there have been multiple different technologies that have been developed for this. I mentioned the 8 time travel technologies that Andy Basiago detailed in his affidavit, that these are distinct technologies. And some of those technologies don't so much use technology per se, but use consciousness. So this raises the question, can time travel only happen via advanced technology? So this is where we get in, again into the Wingmakers material. So because the Wingmakers talk about human DNA and organic time travel. Was this why the Wingmakers material was suppressed? Why the early website and the material that was put out from there was quickly changed by somebody probably associated with the deep state? So this is the Wingmakers. Are they future humans that can use time travel technology, which is organic rather than technological? So the Wingmakers and organic time travel, what did they tell us? So in the original Wingmakers material, what they said was, quote, the genetic composition of the human species was conceived to have 7 senses. You have in recent times begun to refer to the 6th sense, or the sense of intuition. There is a 7th and most powerful sense, and it is the sense that is linked to time travel, which is linked to space travel. Whoa, just think about that. You mean I have within me a sense, a 7th sense, that can tap into space-time, that can actually manipulate time travel? That if, just like intuition, if you develop your intuition, you can become very powerful. You develop your 6th sense, and that's your intuition. That if you start to contemplate time travel, if you start to think about it, if you start to believe that you have this ability, that this 7th sense, your time travel ability, comes online. Whoa, think about that. Very powerful. Now you can understand why it was that the Wingmakers material coming out in 1998 and talking about this was a threat. The deep state didn't want you to know about this. Let's replace this. Let's replace this information, and let's do it in a subtle way so that rather than talking about future humans and this seventh sense that we have within us to time travel, we're going to be talking about not future humans coming here to help us, but we're going to talk, I think they call it the Lyricus order. That's right, the Lyricus order. This order of extraterrestrials from the central race, deriving from some central galaxy, that are here to help us prepare to defend the Earth from this hostile extraterrestrial civilization that is predicated on AI, and that they're going to come here and it's a threat, and so that they're here to help us get advanced technology to combat the threat. So they shift the narrative, they shift the Wingmakers narrative from like individual self-empowerment to empower your sixth and seventh senses of intuition and time travel, to now being like, oh, we're going to help you with advanced technology so you can fight this hostile extraterrestrial AI threat. Very clever, and a lot of people have fallen for that. So the human body is a space-time portal. Nassim Haramein, he has shown that the human body is holographically linked with the entire physical universe via micro black holes and wormholes, and that in fact our biological bodies are natural space-time portals we can use to travel the universe, so the multiverse. So this is Nassim Haramein's groundbreaking information. He talks about every atom, protons, that protons in fact are these black holes, and that he's done the precise measurements, and that using his theory he's able to explain how a black hole, how a atom actually has a black hole at the center of it, and that explains the strong force. That the strong force is not some mysterious force, it's actually the force of gravity being generated by a black hole in the center of a proton. And our body, of course, are made up by atoms. And that means that each of these protons is linked is quantumly linked through a wormhole. So he's saying that essentially our physical body is like a network of black holes. And we know that black holes are capable of generating these wormholes. So Nassim Haramein, he lays out the physics behind how the human body can be a space-time machine. That our physical body is a space-time machine. So this perfectly matches with what the Wingmakers were telling us. And this is what the deep state doesn't want you to know. More information about our physical body being space-time machines comes from Drunvil and Melchizedek in his book, The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life, where he talks about the Merkaba, kind of like a space-time body that can be generated by our consciousness. If you focus on that consciousness, if you focus your consciousness on a Merkaba vehicle, then you can generate a space-time device. And I know people like Elena Ganan has talked about spinning a star tetrahedron. If you get yourself a quartz crystal, a star tetrahedron, and you spin that, it generates an effect. And that effect can be detected by psychics. It actually impacts our auric field in a profound way. So that shows that a star tetrahedron, if you spin it around, it generates an effect, a powerful psychic, or it affects the frequency field. So if you can generate a star tetrahedron around you using your consciousness, then, and you spin it, you generate a change in the space-time around your body. And if you become proficient at this, you can do exactly what Drunvil has said. This is very empowering information, very important for us, because everyone that has listened here to this so far, you have so far listened to the technology side of it, now you're being exposed to the consciousness side of it. You all are capable of doing this. Now, Elena shared with me, and I thank her for sharing information from one of the representatives of this cedar race of extraterrestrials called Una. And she talks about organic time travel. So Una is a representative of the Intergalactic Confederation, or the Cedars, or the Guardian that Elena has physically met with. And this is what Una had to say about time travel. She didn't talk about technology. She talked about us being time travel machines. Una said, if you want to remember, you need to travel through time. You will not have far to go. The door is within you. Close your outer eyes. Open your inner vision. There inside hides the pathway to the eternal memory. You are the vehicle. You are the time machine. Whatever you have lived, you can remember. You can project and be there again, in the avatar you once occupied, in the place where you once lived. You only need to remember and wake up there again as an observer. So that's Una's communication with Elena. And it confirms exactly what the Wingmakers material was telling us, that within us we have a seventh sense. It is time travel. It is innate within us. If we activate it, we can activate these space-time machines that are organic, just as Drunville and Melchizedek has said. You just have to develop the ability. You need to do the consciousness. You need to do the exercise. Take the tools. Get crystals. Spin them around. Resonate with the crystals. There's a way of doing this. And I'll be talking more and more about this. And this is an exciting development that we'll be discussing in the future. So awakening the human potential. People involved in psychic research, such as Ingo Swann, are aware of this, that the future is not one that is dependent on technology. That is what the deep state, or that is what the white hats, the white hats, I think they fight the good fight, but they are into technology. They are technophiles. You can't win a war without good technology. These are guys that look to the future in terms of, give us advanced technology to win the war. And I applaud them for that, because that's what, according to what we know from Mel Billack, won us the Second World War. And that is very important. But there's a more powerful type of time travel that is connected to our ability as conscious entities to organically connect with this ability within us. Robert Monroe, for those wanting to develop these abilities, these senses, he's written 3 books on the ultimate journey, out-of-body experience, and this again is very relevant to this 7th sense. If you want to develop your 7th sense, do some of the Monroe courses. I've registered for one. I'm going to start doing them myself, because those that have developed these psychic abilities, you become very proficient. So this is where we need to go. We need to develop our psychic abilities. We need to develop our ability to use consciousness to do incredible things. And the Monroe Institute is a great place to start. I don't get a commission for saying that. I'm just telling you that out of public, as a public service. So, but hopefully I can get a commission in the future. I'll talk to them. Okay, so the White Hat Disclosure Initiative, I think that this book, this series of books, you can find at skybooksusa.com, is really invaluable. It is, I think, just incredible disclosures. I would cite this series of 7 books as something essential for anyone wanting to truly understand what's going on. It lays it all out. Okay, so the return of the Cedars. Right now, where are we right now as a planet? Should we be optimistic? Should we be pessimistic? Should we, where should we be? I think the Cedars have returned. I've mentioned Una. They're here. Multiple sources confirm that the Cedars, the Guardians, arrived en masse in 2021. Doesn't mean that some of them didn't arrive earlier and kind of lay the groundwork before that, because they did. People have talked about them arriving earlier. But in terms of arriving en masse with fleets of large space carriers and space arcs and all of that, that's more recent. The negative extraterrestrials have been expelled. Well, expel might be too hard a word. The negative extraterrestrials, the Draconians, the Orion Empire, they saw, oh, daddy's back. Daddy's back. Oh, let's get out of here. They're kind of like, interlopers at a teenage party, and the parents arrive. What do? Let's get out of here. So that's what happened. The Draconians and the Orions, they got out because they thought the adults are back. So the seeders and the adults are back. And so what's left is the minions. The former minions of the Dracos and the Orions didn't get the message. They've been given opportunities to let go. They're going, no, we're gonna hold on, and we're gonna trash this place. We're gonna trash this house, but it's not going to happen. So the former minions are now facing inevitable defeat. This temporal war is coming to an end. So our future, full disclosure of the extraterrestrial life and a reckoning of the different ET groups and what they did, and historical intervention in human affairs. I think this is part of, we are going to learn the history, the true history of humanity. All of these things that have been preserved in the halls of records and the space arts, all of that is going to come out. The true history, the invariable history, and what has been happening. We're going to learn that. A century of suppressed technologies going all the way back to Nikola Tesla. Free energy. I mean, he came up with free energy, radiant energy. Tesla had a patent for radiant energy, free energy, in 1901. Over 120 years, this technology has been available, and it's been suppressed by the major technology or the major corporations on the planet. So this is holographic, free energy, electromagnetic healing, exotic propulsion systems. Nearly 6,000 patents have been withheld due to secrecy orders. And this is what the US Patents and Trademarks Office, if you go there, you consult their records, they confirm that almost 6,000 patents have been suppressed due to secrecy orders. And that's a fact. So our future, time travel technology will be released, and it will be regulated like any other advanced technology, such as portals, anti-gravity, spacecraft, and so forth. And individuals will again become proficient. So you're going to have the technology of time travel, but you're going to have individuals that learn to organically time travel using their seventh sense. That's going to be fantastic. And I'm sure all of you here that are listening to this, you're going to be at the cutting edge of that wave. We are the future wave of time travelers that are going to get all of the information, and we're going to educate people for how to do this. Because this is a seventh sense. And the more we develop it as a planetary culture, the more powerful and empowered we become. People like Alex Collier talk about the Patel, that these are the founders, these are the ones that set up the ancient technologies that all of the extraterrestrial civilizations revere and look to. And he sees us as being the Patel because we have the DNA of 22 different extraterrestrial civilizations. And I think because we have that DNA, we are proficient. We are the ones that are going to develop that seventh sense far more than anyone else, because the Andromedans, the Pleiadians, the Alpha Centaurians, the Tausedians, the Draconians, these guys, they rely on technology for time travel and space travel. Because we are, Alex says that we are kind of like genetic royalty. We are the ones that the extraterrestrials are going to look to, because we are the ones that are going to become the future masters of the galaxy, because we are going to be the ones that can organically time travel. So we are the ones that the extraterrestrials are going to look to. So we, rather than being disregarded and like looked at as genetic scum because of everything that's been happening in the galaxy through the Dark Fleet, in the future, extraterrestrials are going to look at the humans and say, wow, these guys they're the masters of the universe, because we have the ability to use space-time in 3D. Extraterrestrials can use it in 4D and 5D, but we can use it in 3D. Wow! No one else can do that. We can do it. We have this ability for space-time travel in 3D. No one else can do it. That's what makes us genetic royalty. So I guess that brings the webinar to a conclusion. I want to thank my team. I want to thank Jasmine for looking after the questions and the chat and helping us technically with this webinar, and especially my wife Angelica looking after the doing all of the switching, the video switching, handling the Q&A, and of course her wonderful video that she put out, the promo for this webinar. I want to thank her for that, because that really did create a wave there that helped people become interested in this time travel event. And I want to thank you for taking the time, for making the effort to learn about this. It's not a topic that a lot of people might find that interesting given what is happening right now in the world, but you chose to spend a few hours to find out more about it, and I think you probably have learned enough to appreciate not only the significance of time travel research and technologies that have been secretly developed and used for well over a century, but maybe now you leave this with a newfound appreciation for your innate abilities, that wow, that you might have within you a seventh sense that is unique to us as a species, that no other species in the galaxy has this, that this makes us unique. And this is something worth exploring, and if you have the interest, develop that, because I think it's well worth it, because I think in the end of the day, each of us can play an important role in having this kind of information come out to the general public. So thank you for coming, for listening, and paying attention. Aloha.
You have been listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.